those of you who just joined, my name is Brad Seibert. I'm the head of prop tech here at Tavant, and I am your moderator for the day. Our next segment we have Paul Orlando, the CIO from Flagstar Bank, joining us. And then we have Tavant's own Mohammad. Mohammad is our head of Fintech, heads up our Fintech and lending practice here. And they're going to get into a little bit of a fireside chat amongst the two of them, talk through some of the things that are really happening in the digital world today. And then we'll open it up for Q&A in about 15 minutes. So with that, I will pass it off. Paul, Mohammad, thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Brad. And thanks, Paul, for joining us. Let me just quickly start the share.
And while he's doing that, for everyone there, Mohammad is also joining us from Southern California, and Paul is joining us from Michigan. So today we have really a diverse geographic set of panelists and speakers today. So Mohammad and Paul, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Brad. So hopefully you can see the slides. The title of the talk is The Art of the Digital, and actually it's a play on words from the art of the possible. We wanted to kind of showcase where digitization needs to be. And now that you're thoroughly impressed with my verbal gymnastics, I'm going to jump into kind of where does digitization matter? So where did we start? We started in the home buying experience, right? So lenders, providers of mortgage home loans got an interesting push from the GSEs, and specifically kudos to Fannie Mae. They basically started the day one certainty program, and it kind of provided a ability to validate sources of data. So digital data became part and parcel of the mortgage experience. So the home buying experience before was, get me your X document and Y document and Z document, upload those and potentially upload them in a very insecure way through your email. But that day one certainty program basically said, you know what, we can get that data for you, and it's validated and verified. So that was the beginning of this. A lot of people credit Rocket Mortgage or Quicken Loans with that. I'm kind of, they've taken a lot of credit. I think this one kind of provided the wider industry momentum towards digitization of data. And that led to newer entrants in the point of sale arena, right? And we started creating customer journeys, persona mappings, customer segmentation. How do I create a specific set of journeys for a specific set of customers? But I believe that we've started that arc of the digital in a very limited, localized position. We have to, and this pandemic kind of pointed the way that we have to start earlier. So the point that we should start at and look at is the point of thought. When a buyer is starting to think of buying a home, that is where the home buying or the home shopping experience has to start. And that is where lenders need to reach out to and have tentacles into in order to handhold this new buyer, prospective buyer, to come into the lending world, the mortgage world. So I think that we have to extend the arc. The arc has been localized for too long within the origination space. It has to reach out to the real estate and the proptech space. The pandemic hit these industries hard, and fortunately enough, the folks, the vendors, the players, the ecosystem players in that market stepped up to the plate. And so you saw a huge turnaround. Within weeks, we saw tools and capabilities in the hands of real estate agents in the form of 3D virtual tours, virtual open houses, online scheduling and calendaring. There's better MLS integrations and actually providing and bubbling up that data to provide a better view and perspective of the home. Better AVM capability and property evaluation capabilities. And eventually there was a lot of discussion before about augmented reality and virtual reality coming into the picture. I think this is now going to happen. If I don't have the ability to walk the home, how do I really walk the home without using those types of technologies? The nice thing about this is I'm not going to go too deep into this segment of the industry. There's partners and friends at Yaza that they will provide a demo. Our own colleague, Matt Wood, would talk about the home buying experience in post-pandemic. So there's a lot of discussions and deep dives in that space, and I'll leave it up to them. What I would like to talk about is more so on the origination and the home buying experience. So assume that Hassan has bought the home, taking from Sarvesh's kickoff of Hassan buying a home. Hassan has bought the home. He looked at it, he virtually toured it. He worked with the real estate agent. It was a little bit of a broken process now, but it's getting better. So now he's into getting a loan to get into the home process, the home buying thing. So what we find is that around February 28th and post that, hordes of borrowers were knocking on the doors of lenders. They wanted to refi. The feds cut the rates. It was an amazing opportunity for refinancing. It still is. Were the originators, were the lenders prepared? So our own experience, a number of us at Tavant have actually refinanced their loans. Our own experience tells us that we were on hold for hours at a time waiting for a loan officer on the other end. So a number of things are still broken. The shock that the pandemic created was a shock to the system, to the scale that the lenders provided to the industry. And in order to absorb that shock, there's a lot of digitization that still needs to happen, even where we started at the beginning. So a lot of areas that could be potential digitization areas are listed out there below. I'm not going to go through each one, but to point out, we quickly developed an instant refi advisor. It stopped the people from, provide the people with a customer self-service capability to see if the lender has the right match for me, if they have the right rate for me or the term for me and the product and program for me without having to talk to a loan officer. I don't want to be on a line for 2 hours waiting for somebody to come up on the other side. And there's other capabilities around digitization with a new form of the digital app intake. We're working with Experian on a service capability that allows you to populate the forms, get validated, verified data in order to fill in the 1003 and provide a mobile capability to kind of submit an application in a very, very accelerated fashion. There's a couple of things I would like to point out. The pandemic has started an acceleration on remote online notarization, RON, and e-closings and e-mortgages. E-notes were picking up. Even before the pandemic, the acceptance of e-notes across multiple states was there. It was starting to accelerate. We had in one quarter what was the e-note registrations on MERS in one quarter was more than what was happening in the previous year altogether. So there was a definite uptick on e-notes, but the RON and e-closings were taking multiple forms, right? Hybrid closings and different forms of turn on off switches were happening in order to get e-notes tied to e-recording, tied to e-notary, tied to the e-closing process itself. So hopefully there's a push towards making that in a standard way. There is a legislation in front of the Senate for secure notarization. Hopefully that will kind of even the field and allow lenders to accept and implement a e-closing as much as possible all the way through in a digital form. The last thing I'll point out on this part of the digital journey is the shock and awe was not just on the front end ability to provide a loan officer. It was once you get the loan through, whether it's a refinance or a purchase, it went through a horrible manual process still, right? We have not really fixed that part of the sausage making factory, right? So the straight-through processing and automated underwriting and ability to kind of provide tools to the underwriter to do their jobs better than having two screens up and ability to stare and compare documents. That has to go away in order to take in the refi volume and the purchase volume that we're expecting. So I know Paul is going to address a lot of these as we go through, but where does that arc end, right? And the stepchild for origination that nobody wants to talk about, and unfortunately digitization hasn't gone there a lot, is servicing. It's kind of, from a lender's perspective, it's kind of the borrower's graveyard. They kind of have a record on the servicing asset. They don't even know them by name. There's a loan number attached to them. So the borrower turns into the biggest asset on the real estate side, into you are my king, the customer is king on the origination side, and then becomes a loan number on the servicing portfolio. Well, that has to change. And that will change given the pandemic and the tsunami that's going to hit their shores pretty soon. Servicing, whether it's special servicing or general servicing, is going to get a huge spotlight. The forbearance tsunami that's coming their way, the ability to do digital hardship applications, a lot of learnings from the loan application intake that can be translated over to the servicing side. We've just not done it. There's not a lot of uptake in getting a digital application for hardship assistance, a digital pathway for loss mitigation and forbearance and workouts. What you have there are people who are taking case files, looking at them manually, going through them, dispositioning them, communicating with borrowers, and trying to figure out what route to take. There's a lot of arc of the digital that needs to happen on the servicing side. Those are the three kind of areas that I feel the arc of the digital needs to encompass. Today, it is pretty much localized on the home buying experience. Two things we'll point out that extending the arc is one matter. Fleshing out the digitization within the arc is the second. The third is the whole process is disconnected. The whole process is disjointed. Even within the origination world, when I started to do my refinancing, I was provided with a tool that took millions and millions of dollars to develop, as advertised by the lender themselves. It was great in terms of putting in and submitting my application, but post-application submission, interestingly enough, I got a email from the processor saying, "Hey, I need more documents from you." And that was a completely out-of-body experience from the platform that they provided me up front. Now I had to go through emails and talk through emails and attach documents through emails to do the post-submission conditions management and condition satisfaction route of the journey. So even within the origination space, there's a lot of disjointed activity and adoption problems. That disjointness and non-connectedness has to become a completely seamless, integrated point of thought to point of thought, because the second point of thought is going to be refinancing again, is going to happen soon. So from point of thought of buying a home to point of thought of refinancing, that has to be a very, very connected experience, an intuitive experience for borrowers with the corresponding digitization of the processing and manufacturing of the loan. So with that, I'll bring in Paul. Hi, Paul, how are you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I wanted to congratulate you up front for being named, Flagstar being named top 100 mortgage companies in the USA in 2019. So that's a great accolade.
Thank you very much. We've been really focusing a lot of energy on our mortgage side of the house. And my whole role is focused on making sure that we're moving our whole platform for originations into more of a digital process, right? As you said, right from the beginning with the real estate and moving all the way through. You know, from our perspective, we've got a lot of things that we are starting right at the beginning with. You know, as you said, with COVID-19, there's been a lot of things going on where people are doing virtual tours to narrow down the houses so that they only have to physically visit a few of them in order to keep, you know, the social distancing guidelines in place. So I've seen a lot of that going on so far. And for ourselves, you know, we're looking at making sure that our loan officers are keeping in contact with the real estate agents, even if it's just on the phone, because, you know, that is, you know, one of our best sources of leads in the purchase marketplace. You know, another thing that we're looking at is how do we engage with the customer sooner in the process? So today we're looking to move the process where they'll come to us and get pre-approved for a dollar amount, so that way they can go off and really know what they're looking for. And once they found that house, make the process that much quicker, getting through to the closing table. Because ultimately that's what, you know, people really want to do, is get to the closing and move into their new house. One of the other things that we're looking at is a company called Home Captain, where they come to our website, they're doing a pre-approval for a purchase, but they're relocating into a new area and they don't know any agents in the area. And this would allow them to click a link and it would take them over to the Home Captain site where they've got realtors all throughout the country that they have vetted and approved, and it helps them narrow down who those people are. And part of that program is, again, if the reference is coming from the lender, there's a much bigger likelihood that the realtor is going to refer the individual back to that same lender. Again, just to help close that whole digital loop. And as we continue to move further and further down the line with point of sale solution, one of the things that we'll consider is working with the realtors and having the loan officers go in and say, by the way, if you've got someone in your office, you can have them click on this point of sale and it'll get them right through the whole origination process and right into the hands of the processors really quick. So again, trying to push as much forward and work closer with the realtor community in order to make sure that we're connecting with the borrowers right at the beginning of the process.
Perfect, that's great. So let's take, if you don't mind, give us a flavor of Flagstar as it appears to the back end of the servicing side. I wanted to go there before we run out of time and kind of address the impact of the pandemic there. 38 million people out of jobs in the unemployment line, 8% to a degree in Ginnie Mae, 11% of the loans are in forbearance already. Although the forbearance curve is flattening, we're using flattening curve all across the board nowadays. Forbearance curve is flattening, but there is a huge amount of them, and the folks that are unemployed are not going to be coming back to work that fast, right? So how are you preparing for that tsunami, so to say, on the servicing side?
So the first thing I'd like to address there is while there are a lot of people who have requested forbearance, a lot of those people are still making their payments. They wanted to request the forbearance so that way they have it in case they need it, but there are still a lot of those people that are continuing to make their payment because they don't want to deal with the repayment options if they start skipping payments. So that is something that's been very positive in that regard. Excuse me. We have been very fortunate to be able to have an application. Last year, we built an application called our LMU system, our loan modification underwriter. So what we did is we've got that all set up and we've trained all of our people on it. We weren't anticipating a pandemic. It was just to keep our normal volume going. But we've got that system in place so that we can quickly put in the information from the borrower or the servicing customer and be able to identify what options are available to them and where we can help them in the most efficient way. So I think we're very well positioned to be able to handle the tidal wave coming. But our hope is that seeing where people are using forbearance right now, it's a safety net that's there. And some of them are having to jump into it, but there is another population of people who are still making their payments. So that's good for the industry and good for the bank as well.
That's great. Actually getting some silver lining, at least in the sense that people are using it as a plan B rather than having to depend on it on plan A. We just have a few minutes left, Paul, but I do want you to kind of talk a little bit about how Flagstar is approaching the whole e-closing and e-mortgage and e-notes and RON. Has that had an impact on how you close mortgages, the rate at which you close mortgages? Have you started that program and your experiences would be helpful?
So Flagstar was one of the first companies that originally adopted e-closing prior to even 2008. Unfortunately, when 2008 hit, the focus was shifted over to, just make sure we shore up the bank and keep everything running as efficiently as possible. So all of our systems were designed already with the e-closing in mind. So what we're focusing on now is some of the vendors that we use have changed over the last 12 years. So we're re-engaging with them, and we're already testing out that process. We'll probably start with the hybrid approach and then more work into the run and full e-close.
Right.
But all of the vendors that we have in place and partners are all set up to be able to handle this, and it'll make that process significantly easier as we go along. Other things that we're doing in the digital spaces is we're trying to do what you were saying in your slide. We're trying to make it as data friendly as possible. So our new point of sale system from this company, who is that? Oh yes, Tavant, Fin Experience. We've started rolling out with one of our divisions, and it's working really well. And that's got some of the day one certainty pieces built into it right up front. But other things that we're doing is for people who still want to provide documents is we're working with another vendor to build out our ability to scrape the data from the documents, recognize them, and clear as many conditions electronically as we can, so that we're not having to go back and have underwriters do every file. Our goal over the next several years is move to a place where 80% of the loan is being handled by data and documents, and where we're not having to go and pull physical pieces of paper. And to your point earlier, where you've got underwriters looking at two different screens, doing a stare and compare. Computers are really good at being able to do stare and compare electronically, right. And that's where we're focusing a lot of energy on these days.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. That was great. That flavor and color from Flagstar was very helpful. I know, Brad, we've come to the end of this session, so over to you.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Paul, for all of that. Thank you, Mohammed, as well.